Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your massively online multi-hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today we venture into the afterlife and yet again into deep space. First I will talk about a young goddess of wisdom trying to solve a case involving ghosts, monsters and dueling fictions in the novel adaptation Spectre. And after that, John will finally be able to talk about a proper anime version of a by now very seasoned, but regardless, due to a recent Western release, again, very relevant MMO, Phantasy Star Online 2.
Yeah!
Yay! So, we are looking forward to talk about these two shows, and hope you are looking forward to listen to it. So, don't pause the pod, we'll be right back. Kotoko Iwanaga is not your typical senior high school girl. Ever since she was abducted by yokai as a child and heeded the call to become their goddess of wisdom, she has transformed into a wanderer between two worlds and a mediator for the creatures of myth and legend. One fateful day, she decides to enlist the help of her 2-year-long crush Kuro Sakuragawa to deal with some of the more dangerous aspects of her extraordinary profession, while also being very intent on becoming his new girlfriend. But is this a story of destined lovers, or does the sudden reappearance of Kuro's fiancé and the re-emergence of a shadow from his dark past spell doom for this unlikely couple? So, in Spectre or Kyoko Suiri, sometimes I kind of feel like calling out the Japanese name of the show because it stood out to me for some reason. But yeah, that show is based on a novel series which started in 2011. Counts 3 volumes now and is still running, is still being published. There is also a manga adaptation which started in 2015, has now been running for 11 volumes, is still running, and I assume the anime is a direct adaptation of that instead of the novel. The anime series ran from January to March this year and counts 12 episodes. And the animation is produced by Brainspace, who have done a lot of shows. The second season of Spice and Wolf, for example, also Penguin Drum, Natsume's Book of Friends, which is kind of comparable to this show in terms of themes and everything, now that I think about it. Also Bakano, Durarara, Blood Lad, and a bunch of other stuff. And the director is Keiji Goto, who also was a director on Kitty Grade, End Ride, Sengoku Collection, and he was an episode and animation director on other things like the Old Fruits Basket Show and Martian successor Nadesico. And Spectre is a good-looking show, no doubt about it. There are not many action scenes in this, but those that are in there are mostly well animated and occasionally pretty gruesome due to a certain aspect of the show's story, which I'll get to in a moment. But yeah, the animation is good, and the character designs are pretty damn sharp and varied. Kuro's ex in her police outfit is definitely a looker. No way to talk around that. In general, it seems like most care was put into making these characters look interesting and different. The yokai, ayakashi, spirits, monsters, whatever you want to call them, also look very different and interesting. Sometimes scary, sometimes cute, sometimes imposing, just like their personalities. So, contrary to my review from last week, there's enough cool, well-drawn shit to see, character-wise, this time around. The soundtrack is also neat. It was composed by Akihiro Manabe. I don't know what else he has done, but he delivered something solid here. Nothing too spectacular, but there are definitely 1 or 2 memorable themes in here. Especially the heroic version of the main theme is great. The ED is super catchy, and the 2 main characters dancing together while still being kind of apart for most of the time is a nice touch because it kind of fits how they behave in the show for most of the time. So what drew me into this series initially was its set of main characters and its world. And it seemed to be like this, kind of procedural, kind of detective maybe story thing set in the spirit world, which I'm like, okay, I'm interested in that. And from the get-go, Kotoko is already a pretty unusual female protagonist because she's handicapped. To become the yokai's goddess of wisdom, she had to give up her right eye and left leg and is now wearing prosthetics and has to rely on a cane to walk. Although these prosthetics follow anime logic. So they move and look just like a normal eye and a normal leg until the plot demands them not to. So you'll need a solid amount of suspense of disbelief in that regard. But yeah, despite her handicap and her petite physique, Kotoko is incredibly feisty. She's clever, has a foul mouth on her, and makes some apropos vulgar jokes on a regular basis. And she's very forward about her romantic interest in Kuro, right from the beginning. And I was hoping they would actually go anywhere with that for once in this medium's fucking history when it comes to high school romances, although it turns more into a college romance, I guess. And spoilers, they do go somewhere with that, pretty quickly actually. But yeah, I really like that forwardness of her character. It's pretty rare in anime. The show manages to give her this neat mix of a slightly childish obsession with Kuro and yet a very adult and reliable approach to her work and the more serious aspects of their life. She doesn't really have any powers besides being able to talk to yokai and conjuring them up and touching them if need be, but her intelligent analytic mind makes more than up for it when it comes to actually doing the investigative stuff. And on the other side of the coin, we have Kuro, who is her muscle and can come across like a bit of a bore for most of the show, though that is partially facade and partially just part of his character. Kotoko in the beginning of the show says he reminds her of a goat, in a positive way. Spacey, but with lots of vitality. Never underestimate a goat. But Kuro has a certain set of skills, which he gained by being forced to eat 2 kinds of yokai flesh as a child. He has the ability to see the future, because he ate the flesh of a kudan, and is damn near immortal, because he also ate the flesh of a mermaid. And these 2 skills complement each other pretty well, because technically, the kudan flesh enables Kuro to see the future, but only if he dies first.
Oh.
Yeah, quite the catch. Which is where the mermaid flesh comes in, naturally, because it gives him a Wolverine-ish healing factor and makes him quasi-immortal. He's still aging normally, at least for now, so he is unkillable, but not really immortal as in eternal youth immortal. But yeah, as you can imagine, that is an immense boon when he and Kotoko face off against the more dangerous yokai, since his blood also seems to be poison to them, and he can't easily be killed. And that also means he can win fights in general, even though he is not athletically gifted, pretty easily. It's cool to see him calmly assess the situation after dying and just walk up to a monster and evade its attacks, and then snapping its neck or something. But as I already alluded to, the way he obtained these powers is immensely fucked up, and so are the fights he is involved in, because he dies a lot. Very gruesome ways sometimes. And in general, the show has some really surprisingly dark aspects, moments, and themes to it. Not only on the visual side of things, but also, in certain story aspects. But still, most of the time, it manages to retain this kind of casual, funny, easygoing feel, mostly during the character conversations, and because of its set of main characters. And the yokai they meet are also fun, or cute, or appropriately creepy, depending on the situation. Kotoko has these, 2 super cute spirit dog companions that I would like to have a plush version of. Another important character is Kuro's ex-fiancée, Saki, who after the show makes a time jump forward of 2 years in episode 3, has become a police officer. And when Kotoko meets Kuro for the first time, he and Saki are still a couple. But then Saki leaves him, as we learn later, because she got scared of Kuro, because he regenerated in front of her eyes when cutting himself by accident, and because they ran into a kappa one night at the river's bank, and that creature ran away in terror, since Kuro looks like a complete monstrosity to all yokai, because they see him as this disgusting amalgamation of a kudan and a mermaid and a human. They're also not very fond of their revered goddess of wisdom getting into relations with this, to them, hideous and scary dude, because they are very concerned for her well-being, which is kind of cute. Them like fussing over her and constantly like, why do we have to hang out with that guy? He's so disgusting, which is pretty funny. But they come around after a while and start to rely on Kuro as well, because he can be relied upon. And yeah, once Saki re-enters the picture in episode 3 after the time jump and becomes entangled in Kotoko's current investigation, things, of course, get a bit complicated. Kotoko definitely sees Saki as competition, because she and Kuro had a much more affectionate relationship than Kotoko and Kuro have, at least on the surface. And Kuro still seems to have lingering feelings for Saki, which in the beginning makes things difficult between these three characters. And Kotoko, as fitting for her character, is not afraid to wave the fact that she and Kuro are a couple now in front of Saki's face on a constant basis, or use her relationship to the yokai to torture Saki a bit here and there, which sounds
vindictive much?
Yeah, kinda. But it sounds more off-putting than it actually is, because she's such a fun, endearing character and has a good heart underneath it all, and her interactions with Saki have this kind of genuine feel to it, that it doesn't come across as overly mean-spirited, no pun intended. So we have like 2.5 episodes of getting introduced to Kotoko, Kuro, and how Kotoko does her job. Like in the second episode, there is this Phoenix Wright-ish case where Kotoko interviews a giant guardian snake because a human corpse was dumped into its sacred lake, and it wants to know what the fuck is up with that. And during that investigation, Kotoko is basically doing a thought exercise while talking to the giant guardian snake, rather than actually investigating on the scene. Like, she considers all the clues and lays out several possible scenarios for what might have happened with the body that got dumped into the swamp and everything. And basically then draws her conclusions at the end and comes to kind of this has to have been it scenario, even though we can't really be sure about that. But that's what happens. And, you know, the guardian snake is okay with that, and we are supposed to be okay with that, I guess. The problem is it's not the most exciting way to solve a mystery, to be honest. It's more tell than show, or at least tell and show at the same time, because they do some flashback stuff, they do some, okay, this might have happened stuff with certain characters that are involved in that mystery. It's not just Kotoko talking, but she's talking over it all the time, like all the things that we see, and basically explaining what is happening on screen, even though that really isn't necessary. There could have been a more interesting way to stage this. It feels very, hey, this was a novel. There was a lot of writing and explaining and talking. Let's just fucking put that in all of those scenes and not do anything else to it.
Oh,
it's like,
boy.
like what is a visual medium kind of thing? Like the people who made this show have never actually considered what medium they're working in. So, yeah, this is how it feels, and this was like the first warning of what, in my opinion, doesn't work about the show at all, and which is also sadly the reason that the actual plot of this series is pretty boring, or at least staged and executed in a boring, or at least misguided way. So, after these 2 lead-in episodes, we get, like I said, a 2-year time jump. Kotoko and Kuro have been a couple for a while now, and they and Saki run into each other when investigating the case of Steel Lady Nanase, which seems to be the ghost of an idol which was crushed by steel beams. Then returned from the afterlife without a face, and is now swinging one of those giant steel beams as a weapon, and is starting to haunt and attack random human civilians. And the rest of the show from this moment on is basically Kotoko, Kuro, and Saki working together to unearth the secret behind Steel Lady Nanase. Questioning yokai witnesses about it, like trying to find out, is she actually a ghost? Did she commit suicide? Was she murdered? How did she really die? Is maybe someone responsible for killing her and bringing her back? How can they stop her and send her back to the afterlife? Which on the surface sounds like a really exciting mystery if done well, right? The problem is, just like with ID Invaded, it's not much of a mystery at all, though for different reasons. So I'm gonna give away a kind of big part of the story here, but I need to talk about what bothered me with the show and how it was handled. So be aware of that. I cannot be really vague about the identity of Steel Lady Nanase and how she came to be, so if you care about that aspect of the show, maybe skip to the next review now. So, Kuro and Kotoko turn out to be unreliable narrators. They knew from the get-go, or pretty early on, who the real culprit was all along. Since Kotoko saw the drawing of Steel Lady Nanase on a website, and it was painted, that drawing was painted in the style of the person who is responsible and who they know personally. And that in itself was kind of a nice surprise, but it is revealed rather matter-of-factly and very early. So at that point, most of the mystery is gone, except for maybe the motive, which, to be honest, is not that exciting. We learn it at the end of this of the season, the final episode. But it's like, okay, we'll see what comes of that. But it's still incredibly vague. Saki even makes a joke about that, like, that's not even a real fucking answer. It's literally what she says when Kotoko explains it to her. And Saki is also the point of view character for the audience here, and we get filled in on this revelation at the same time as she is. So Steel Lady Nanase, as it turns out, was born from the shared imagination of people on the internet who looked at basically a creepypasta website. So she is something similar to the main antagonist in Recreators, which was also created and fed by different ideas about her from the internet. And that website where all this originated was created by the person behind all of this. And so to destroy Steel Lady Nanase, Kotoko basically has to craft a well-constructed fiction to rob this crowd-funded evil spirit of her powers. She has to make the people who want to believe in the existence of the ghost Steel Lady Nanase that it actually doesn't exist. That it's something made up by the creator of the website, which becomes more and more difficult the more people start to see Nanase wreak havoc in real life. And this idea of setting up a meticulously crafted lie to rob this spirit of her power and infamy is clever, but you really, really didn't need to spend at least 4 whole episodes of Kotoko trying to convince random strangers on the internet without faces to believe in her fiction. It's a drag. The show and tell I mentioned earlier, the sitting around and talking about it feels super lazy. I don't know if this is a light novel/novel adaptation problem or a genre problem in general, but this is how it turned out. I mean, it's kind of impressive how Kotoko sets up a bunch of different theories about the true quote-unquote origin, because we know the actual truth is that she is a ghost, but, you know, she wants to try to make her fiction sound more true, more real than reality. So her coming up with all these different theories about this made-up true origin of hers, of Steel Lady Nanase, and the identity of that person. And it's impressive how she lures the people visiting the fan site into her web of lies and basically lets them to do something themselves that is pretty much identical to the fiction she has come up with beforehand. She debunks the truth that Steel Lady Nanase is an actual ghost with the lie that Nanase Karin is still alive and orchestrated the whole thing. It's a pretty neat masterclass in mass manipulation through discussion and mixing in enough truths to make her lie seem plausible. Which in itself, again, neat idea, neat construct, neat concept, bad execution. You did not need to spend that many episodes on it. It just drags on way too long. The villain does not play an integral part enough to make this duel of realistic fiction and fantastical truth an exciting endeavor at all. There's like one interaction between them when the antagonist like writes her own comment post on the website, and that's it, kinda. Aside from that, they don't really have any interaction. If it would have been like this dialogue between two, they come up, you know, with more and more theories to strengthen their individual, you know, point of view and try to convince the, you know, outside party of the, of the fan side viewers of their different theories, that would have been more interesting, like having really this discussion and having, and clashing with each other. And then you couldn't have put the villain on the one side and Kotoko on the other side, basically in two different rooms, not really looking at each other, but having like this basically, again, Phoenix Wright-ish courtroom duel. And they didn't do that. It's mostly just Kotoko talking to a bunch of faceless screens, literally screens, like silhouettes of people with a question mark on them. And then explaining her fiction to them. Yeah.
Read my fan fiction, please. It'll make the reality very real.
Yeah, it also is like... She does that several times, and it's like it almost becomes a running joke after where she says, okay, this is the first solution, this is the second solution, this is the third solution, this is the actual final fourth solution. And I'm like, at what point do you, as the guy who visits that website, just look at that person posting new shit over and over and say, oh, fuck that troll. It's like, okay, why do you even give her the time of day? I mean, it's kind of convincing, somewhat convincing bullshit, but, she is constantly just monologuing about it, and, we'd sometimes cut away to Kuro constantly being dismembered by Steel Lady Nanase. And trying to be ready for when her power weakens enough so that he can beat her to a pulp and send her back to the afterlife. And that is just, that is not an interesting way to stage this. Like, not at all. And like I said, it drags on way too long. And it's too much of the same, and it's too boring, and doesn't move on fast enough. Like, the pacing in this part of the story is catastrophical. And even though the show is telling us that Kuro has had an integral part in winning this battle at the end, it sure doesn't feel like it. Aside from maybe striking the killing blow when, like I said, Nanase was weakened enough by Kotoko's fiction. But yeah, the execution on this is just weird and kind of boring. It really feels like someone tried to adapt a novel and wasn't aware that a visual medium like anime has different needs and rules to make a concept like this actually work and to make it actually interesting and fun to look at and fun to experience and fun to, investigate along and everything. Which is a bummer because I like the basic idea. It's definitely something I haven't really seen tackled before, aside from maybe in Recreators, but it was still a bit different and definitely handled much better in that series than in this one. Well, let's say it was actually exciting to watch. Well, this mostly wasn't. Although, I gotta say, the fact that the antagonist is literally killing herself over and over to win an argument on social media
That's dedication.
Made me laugh quite a bit. What a contemporary, tragic, and incredibly stupid analogy. Fantastic. The one thing I really liked about this show are its characters and their relationships. Kotoko and Kuro are a great pair, and even though on the surface you might think they are a complete mismatch, Kuro doesn't seem too thrilled to be with Kotoko, judging from her cell phone photos where he has this, oh, why me expression all the time when they're hanging out. Kuro obviously still has feelings for Saki and acts like Kotoko is a burden, so you wonder, why are they even together? But throughout the entire season, and especially in the final episode, you get the feeling that these two actually belong together and complete each other very well through small gestures sprinkled in between, like Kuro touching Kotoko's leg in an affectionate way, or simple small things they say to each other. And you begin to understand that Kotoko might not be Kuro's type, because that's Saki, but because of certain aspects of his past, she is the antidote he really needs to escape its grasp. And well done, more grown-up relationships like these are a rare breed in anime, and these two are just fucking sweet together. Not to mention that it's refreshing to see that the show makes no qualm about the fact that they are definitely fucking, without being too coy or lecherous about it, which is also a rare thing. I feel like usually anime dance around this fact, or they are being like super edgy about it, and the show doesn't do either. Aside from a couple of vulgar jokes by Kotoko, but that's basically it. And those jokes are funny. So I wish the show had focused more on these characters and their relationships, and put Saki in there, and Saki is interesting too. And like I said, maybe more focus on their characters and their development and their relationship rather than on the plot, which was a snooze fest. Or made the actual investigation or the actual dueling fiction part more interesting in terms of staging, in terms of execution, in terms of how it was portrayed. Like, try to make it more exciting to watch. This is a visual medium. I want to look at these things. I just don't want to just listen to them. For that, I have podcasts. So, or audio dramas, or audiobooks. So, I don't know. I expect more from an actual show, which I didn't get here, which is a shame. It says the end at the conclusion of the final episode of this season, so I wonder if we'll get more. I mean, there's more material, definitely, but I don't know if they plan to adapt more of it. I might check it out if they do more with the characters and focus more on that, but if we get another boring monologue session for 4 episodes, I'm out. That aspect of the story just doesn't work on the screen, at least not in the way it is handled here. Yeah, quick review. Sorry, but this is a lot of the show is taken up by a bunch of stuff that didn't need to be that long, and without going into more spoilers, I can't really talk about it, but that stuff takes up most of the time of the show, and like I said, it's not very interesting. It's too much time to spend on that, and there's no reason to dwell on this any further, so if you are not bothered by overly talky shows that didn't successfully make the jump to the screen, maybe check it out. You can find it on Crunchyroll, and the characters might be worth it, but chances are you will feel as underwhelmed by the actual plot of the show as I did.
So, next up is a return to something that we previously talked about in a different form. Thankfully, maybe. I'll address that later on. But this time is Phantasy Star Online 2, Episode Oracle, which is more in line with the story of the game. So each part of the story has been sort of like, your typical MMO expansion. So Episode Oracle covers episodes 1 through 3 of the game, and I'm going to be saying the word episode a lot, and it's not confusing. Sorry. So the bulk of this talk is basically going to be about the story of episode 1, which in the anime is episodes 1 to 10.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, because the video game version just released here in the West about 2-ish months ago, and even though I have logged 130 something hours, I've still only played episode 1.
Good job.
I'm sorry.
Playing the MMOs the right ways.
Listen, there's a daily grind.
Yes, I know. There is in every MMO, there's a fucking daily grind.
There's daily missions and weekly missions, and you get stars for your tier card, and you get cool cosmetics, and you. I'm getting away from the point. PSO2 Episode Oracle. So, your brief plot overview is that in the year AP 238, not 2038, 238, the space fleet named Oracle continues I'm falling apart already. The space fleet named Oracle continues its exploration through the galaxy. The space fleet named Oracle continues its exploration through one galaxy after another. As it travels and discovers new planets, its force, Arcs, descends to investigate the surface and eradicate foulspawn which lurk on planets near and far. Our story follows Ash, a fledgling member of Arcs. On his journey to aid his fellow friends and fighters, he meets a wide range of people, including a mysterious young lady named Matoy, on a routine mission on the planet Navarius. Ash and Matoy's lives become slowly intertwined, and as they do, a cover-up involving the foul spawn, larger than they or any of their new friends could have ever imagined, begins to take shape. So there's a hint of mystery in the
Sounds
story.
like a conspiracy.
Yes, actually.
Ah.
So, obviously, PSO2 is based on the game of the same name. It was worked on by our friends at Studio Gonzo, who we have talked about previously in regard to... they've worked on other shows such as Afro Samurai, the first season of Full Metal Panic. We talked before about Akiba's Trip, the animation, a show that I thought was decently fun and, for what it was, well enough produced.
And apparently they are still using a low-res logo animation. How fitting.
Yeah, I don't understand. So, go to watch it on Funimation and, they should throw their old logo before the Funimation logo and it's like 360p.
Yes. It's kind of endearing, but it's also very, very gonzo.
It's like, what is happening? Did I change the quality on the browser? No. But I think they did a decent job with the animation on the show. It's it's a little spotty at times, but the character designs were at least recognizable. There's not too much, there's not too many instances where I would look at a character and say, "Oof, you look very off model." I know you didn't get a chance to watch all of it, but I don't know how you felt about whether or not it looked bad or not from what you saw.
No, not necessarily bad. It's like it feels not low budget, but like a typical mid-budget show where it's like, oh yeah, it's not a really bad cash-in game adaptation, but it's like, yeah, there's nothing to really write home about here, but it's serviceable, it's good, it's fine, it's not offensive. Like I don't think even the CG was super bad or something, or did it get worse?
The CG was, it was average throughout. They saved the CG for a lot of the cast, the robot characters.
Ah, okay, that's good. I remember the CG in the other PSO2 series not being that great. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, but I mean, most of it was traditionally hand-drawn, but okay,
that's good.
Being that this is an MMO, of course, there's different races of characters that you can choose, and one of them, like I said, is this race of robots called casts. And a lot of the CG was reserved for most of the shots of those characters, and it doesn't feel like super stiff. Could be a little better, but it looks fine, I feel like.
Speaking of the different races and classes and everything, are all of them present? All of the ones from the game present in this? In this first season, or do we, get some of them later, maybe?
I think you see all but one of the races. Like, there's, humans. I think that speaks for itself what they are. There's Newmans, which are basically sort of like...
kind of cat girls. Or fairy elf thingies.
More elven.
Yeah.
They have a higher, or they're supposed to be portrayed as having like a higher adeptness for like magics and whatnot. There was a race that was added later on after Phantasy Star Portable 2 Infinity came out on the PSP.
It definitely wasn't. I know which race you're talking about, and definitely wasn't in the first Phantasy Star Online that had only had the humans, and casts.
Yeah, so they kind of carried that into the show. I don't think Dumans really play into episodes 1 through 3. I think they might have come in later when they were added to the game later.
Okay.
But yeah, we see, a good sampling of all the different races and whatnot. ARX is a equal opportunity employer.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of the scale of ARX? Because it's, not ARX, but the whole fleet that they work on. because, you know, like you said in the beginning, they travel like from planet to planet to, I don't know exactly what their mission is, just, you know, trying to be explorers, trying to find what's, you know, if those planets are hospitable. I think that was the goal in Phantasy Star Online 1, why they were, you know, traversing the galaxy, I guess, or the universe.
Well, I mean, the plot of PSO1 was there were these two colony ships, Pioneer and Pioneer 2. Pioneer went to a planet called Raggle, and they were trying to colonize it, and they just suddenly disappeared. Oh boy. Yes. Oh no. So Pioneer 2 came in, and they had to clean up and find out what happened, and hey, guess what? Everybody's favorite Phantasy Star villain, Dark Falls, was behind, wiping out Pioneer 1.
A man of many faces. Well,
yes.
Creature of many faces, actually on the ground below it. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, that fight was cool.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah, ARCS is basically like the peacekeeping force on Oracle. ARCS standing for, Jesus Christ, Artificial Relic to Keep Species.
What?
Yes, it stands for something.
It's, wow.
They were founded in the year AP0 by a race called the Photoners, but that's not part of the story of Episode 1.
Does AP mean after Pioneer, or? It
means after Photon.
Oh, okay, after discovery of photon particles or something like that, I guess.
Yes. After Photon, AP, also known in Japanese as the New Light History.
So is Photon like this new energy source they discovered, and that the new weapons and everything are made of, and, you know, the engine to traverse the universe, or what was it in the context of the show?
Yeah, Photon basically is a type of energy source that powers like the ships, the weapons that ARCs use, everything that encircles the Oracle fleet and all that they do, pretty much. Right. So ARCs are basically just out to investigate the presence of Foulspawn, and are, like I said, kind of a peacekeeping organization that traveled the galaxy, not really looking for a place to settle down like the way the Hunters and the two crews of the Pioneers in PSO1 were. So they're more of a going around making sure everything, you know, is all right, and that don't do anything bad, Foulspawn. We've got our eyes on you. Wagging the finger very violently at them.
What are the Foulspawn? I mean, I think it was explained pretty much in the beginning of the show, at least on the surface, but I'm not sure. I mean, I can guess what they are, but, you know, are they like this weird alien race that appear out of nowhere? How are they portrayed in the beginning?
They're portrayed as being this, like, sort of mysteriously violent alien force of creatures, and they take on different shapes. Like, some are like more insectoid, some are more like winged, some are like aquatic. They take on like weird, warped appearances, sometimes of their own, sometimes they take over the creatures that are native to the planets that ARCs go to. And there's this, they kind of explain it better in the show. It's weird because there's a lot of things that are kind of fleshed out in different ways in the show than in the game. And I'm of the belief that even though that there are some strange changes in the show that I do think still work, a lot of it works for the better. Kind of like, we didn't talk about it back when it aired because we were waiting on I think we were both waiting on the movie sequel to it, Fate Extra. Fate Extra Last Encore, that's what it was called. So that was an adaptation of a PSP game, and boy, if they adapted that game straight, it would have been boring as shit to watch. So what they did was they were like, hey, we're going to shift things around, because the way it worked in Fate Extra was it's, obviously a Holy Grail war, but it's inside like this cyber world, and part of it involves traversing this labyrinth. Yeah. And it's this changing labyrinth that changes after each stage of the war, of the tournament, as it were, basically. In the anime, they were like, yeah, that's boring. We're going to make it so that each part of the Grail War is like a different tier of this world that the characters are traveling through. And the construction of that world depends on, the master and the servant in that world. And it's like, okay, that works. And they sort of took certain elements of the game and changed them such that in PSO2, that is, and fleshed them out and made it, because in the game, they changed how the story progression works in the game, and I feel like this bears mentioning. Back when the game first released, there was a system in place called the Matter Board.
Yes.
And it was like this bingo card where you're fulfilling different objectives, and you see the story play out in different orders, and there's even some branching paths with slightly different things that you can see.
I still played that version when I played the fan-translated Japanese version.
Yeah, I play a little bit of that version as well, but after episode 5 came out, they were like, we're axing that. And they killed it entirely. So the story progression now is, instead of going out and doing objectives in the world and seeing different cutscenes and interactions while you're out on these expeditions, now it's relegated to being like a list of cutscenes that you watch. And it kind of... I mean, it tells the story, but it kind of kills the momentum, because a lot of it is just like, oh, I'm going to watch a cutscene. Oh, I'm going to watch another cutscene. Yeah. Oh, hey, here's an actual fight. And now 5 more cutscenes, which,
it's very Kojima.
yeah, but I mean, it doesn't feel like Kojima. There's no like 45-minute fucking cutscenes.
Okay. But still, it's not very well integrated into the actual gameplay.
Yeah, I was saying to a friend of ours that they restructured the game and it didn't feel like they took that into account.
Yeah. They probably didn't.
No. So the plot of episode 1 starts with our main hero, Ash, or your player character.
I was about to ask, that's one of the things, this is again a character that doesn't really exist in the original game, because you're supposed to fill that role. So did they give that character any interesting development? Did they write him a story, or, basically that you were supposed to experience in the game that is interesting enough, or is he like this cardboard cutout coon?
You know what? I feel like Ash is actually a real character, more so than your character gets to interact with the others in the game.
Wow, that's a nice surprise. I'm glad to hear that.
He starts out sort of, awkward. He's a new ARCS operative. He's trying to make new friends and meet new people. He meets this kid Affin, and they become friends, and they go on missions together. And he, as he starts to meet other characters, you sort of see him slowly coming out of his shell.
And I mean, you meet these characters in the game. You meet Alphen. You meet all the other, class representatives that you can learn your class from and everything, and that make the story move forward and everything. But you're right. In the game, it feels like they're, at least in the beginning, I don't know how it is later, but it feels like they're tutorial characters. And I was wondering if it feels like that in the anime too, if they're just there to explain the world to, the point of view character Ash, or if he has some actual, genuine interaction with them, and if there's some development of those relationships.
No, I mean, it really honestly feels like they're like, yeah, we're going to write this character. And I really feel like they gave him some believable interactions, because after he one of the first missions that Ash and Affin go on, they run across this mysterious girl named Matoi, and they bring her back to the Oracle fleet to be taken care of in the medical bay. And in the game, for pretty much all of episode 1, except for maybe like 5 or 6 scenes, she's kind of sidelined. And that's because her story is more important in episode 3. But in the anime, all of these characters that get a lot more sidelined in the game, they have more of a role in the show, and they have more presence, and they feel important. They feel like, actual companions and characters, that matter. Because Matoi is like, hey, I want to help out with arcs too, and I want to be your friend, and I want to give you support, how whatever it is, and because that causes trouble sometimes, but it shows that she's a well-meaning character. She's got more than just being like this pretty white-haired girl that appears and then just for 40 hours does nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like they made the right choices to turn this into something that you would actually be interested to watch. Unlike the misgivings I had about in Spectre earlier, where that thing didn't survive the transfer to the new medium. But it seems like they actually put the work in to make this story, or whatever bits and pieces there were of a story in the game actually work in anime form, which is really, first of all, surprising to hear, because that's a rare thing when it comes to anime game to anime adaptions. And second, just in general, is nice. It's nice to hear.
I would honestly, I feel like I would class this show as more of a retelling than an adaptation because of it. Because there are these details that get added in. There's also a lot that's taken out, and there's some that's changed. But I feel some of the things that are taken out, I feel like were probably for the best for the sake of time. Otherwise, probably, because in that case, all of episode 1 could have probably taken up the full 25 episode runtime.
Yeah.
And then it would have dragged really, really heavily. But
yeah, sure, sounds like it.
I feel like they sort of spent about the right amount of time getting through, each part of the story and giving it, time enough to breathe. Episode 1 is also kind of weird because there's a lot of plot threads that start showing up, but only like 2 are seen to their conclusion, and that's because everything else, follows through to episode 2, follows through to episode 3, that sort of thing. So you sort of start getting breadcrumbed into the next story, and you don't realize it. Like, like I said, with Matoi, her big story comes in episode 3. There's a character that gets introduced sort of in the middle-ish of the episode 1 story in the anime, named Luther, who in the game you don't see Luther until like the tail end of episode 1, and then his story is episode 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they sort of weave him in there a little bit more to be like, remember this guy, he'll be important later. Why?
A bit of a tease, one might say.
Yeah, and it works. It works really well, because otherwise, if they just sort of dropped him in there and be like, "Oh, he's here now," I probably would have been like, "All right, okay, sure." But a lot of the story, or the early story, revolves around going to different planets and investigating the foul spawn presence on the 3 main planets in episode 1 are a temperate sort of or sort of like a very earthy planet called Nefarious. You see the different biomes of forests and tundra, and
I think the first things you discover, you uncover on Nefarious in the game are the forest, the caves, then you get the desert, I guess, and then the sea stage or something, the beach. I think something like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the areas, I believe the desert and the abandoned mine, take place on another planet called Lilliput.
Oh, okay.
And then the later on, which we don't really see, the Daybreaker and Nightbreaker province are on Japan planet. I mean Harukotan.
Okay.
No lie, it's suddenly Japan planet. Okay.
Oh, is that the thing from the game where it suddenly is a normal city for some reason? Where it looks like you're in fucking Tokyo or something?
No, it looks more like, like Edo era
Oh,
Oriental
okay.
sort of,
Because I remember there to be, normal houses, but maybe that was on the actual Oracle fleet and not on one of the planets.
Yeah, there's parts of the story where as the Foulspawn breakout gets more and more widespread, it sort of starts to spread to the different ships in the Oracle fleet.
Okay.
And the arcs have to be dispatched to the different ships. In particular, on Ship 128, which happens about 5 episodes into the show, and shit starts to get real bad, especially when one of the other. So, God, you meet like a million different characters in the show and in the game. Like some of the other key characters that Ash meets are like a guy of the Hunter class named Zeno. He's kind of impulsive, but he cares about. You can tell he cares about his the people who work under him, because there's this girl that works with him named Echo, and Echo she's a little bit of a little skittish when it comes to combat, but it's like, hey, come on, you're part of ARCs. You gotta do better, and I'll help you out, but what's going to happen when you need to stand on your own, sort of deal. There's everybody's favorite yandere robot girlfriend, Risa.
Okay.
She sort of appears out of nowhere, kills a few Foulspawn, and she's like, hey, the arcs are cool and all. I'd like to pop their heads open too, but I guess that's against the rules. And sort of taunts Ash, and it's like,
is she the gunner tutorial in the game? I think, or ranger tutorial character. I think
Gunner.
I talked to her.
Gunner/ranger, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I like her.
Yes.
She's on the crazy side, especially her laugh is very indicative of that.
Mm-hmm. Risa is an interesting character. Of course, you have your buddy Affin, who you start the game off with, and I don't think there's a dub of the show yet, but in the game there's English voices, and he comes from Space Australia.
Oh no!
and you know what? Affin is a good kid. He means well. His story is that he's been searching for something or someone ? Mm-hmm. That's again part of the plot of episode 2. You also meet this one ARC's operative, Theodore, and he, joined to help out wherever he could, but he's also sort of like, I joined because my friend couldn't, sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
It turns out his friend is this girl named Ulku, and she works in Franca's Cafe on the Oracle fleet. So, she's like, man, I couldn't make the cut, but I hope my friend Theodore does well. And
no pressure.
And things happen between the two of them that, again, that's some episode 2 stuff. But, there's this huge cast of characters that are really interesting. Another one is this giant asshole named Get 'em Holt. He has sort of a weird checkered past, but he comes across as this really hot-headed, I just want to fight you. Don't get in my goddamn way or I'll fuck you up sort of guy.
Ah, that archetype.
Yeah, and he runs around with this girl, Malfonsina. She's basically your token mage character. She's not the Force/Tector tutorial character in the game, but she's there. And, she's there to be a mage type character. And those two characters go back and, they have sort of a weird dark past together it's weird because even though Get 'em Holt is an asshole, like a big asshole, like a real big asshole, there's parts where you sort of like, all right, I guess... All right. It doesn't justify the way you act, but I guess I feel bad for you, dude. And Cena sort of gets the short end of the stick because we find out through all these adventures that hidden behind a cloaking device in the tundra of Navarius is this weird shrine that has been unknown to like everyone, including everyone in Arcs. And when Ash and some others stumble upon it, one of the Council of Six, Maria, I believe, is like, "Hey, you shouldn't be here. The fact that you've seen this means you need to go, or you need to go."
Is the Council of Six like these main Arcs members, like the big ones, or some ruling class or something?
Yeah, they are like the big top brass of the Arcs operation.
Okay. Cream of the crop.
Yes, a lot of them. It's sort of shown later on that their name isn't their own. It's more like they inherit a title that is passed down from the previous member of Council of Six, from before them, who filled that role. So it's kind of weird. Like they are titles as opposed to like being characters with actual names. They are, I am blah blah blah, the second or third or fourth or 10th or whatever. So Gedemholt catches wind of this shrine on Navarius, and he goes there with Malphone Cena. Sometimes her name is just shortened to Cena, just for the sake of brevity. And he says, "Hey, how about we break this seal? That seems like a real good idea." It's not a good idea. Spoilers.
Sounds bad to me.
Yeah. And the power from this broken seal sort of starts to flow into him, and wouldn't you know it, Arcs from way back, they couldn't defeat this old nemesis of theirs called Dark Falls. So they sealed him away underneath this shrine on Navarius and left him there, hoping that he wouldn't be discovered. Well, when Cena breaks the seal and Gedemholt loses his mind and almost kills her in the process, he becomes a creature called Dark Falls Elder. This big, bulky looking guy with this extreme battle lust, and he just wants to fight. He just wants to get some blood on his hands. And I think a friend of ours described him real well. He's a Saturday morning cartoon villain.
Oh boy. I mean, those can be fun.
Like when Elder takes over Gedemholt's body, he's basically just like, "Yo, what's up? 1v1 me, you Arcs pussies. Bring it on." It's pretty close to that.
Not bad at all. I mean, it depends on how long they drag this out, and if there's not more to that character, then have him kick some ass, then bring the characters into a dire situation, and then let them kick his ass. But I don't know how long they keep him around.
They don't drag that out too much.
Good.
Not in the show. In the game, it's a little long in the tooth, but it's not terrible. Mostly because it plays out differently in game, and I'm gonna get to later on how things played out or what was removed or changed, just for compare and contrast sake.
I assume the energy of Dark Falls is just maybe moving from character to character or something, and trying to become different incarnations and versions of Dark Falls.
Yeah, so Dark Falls basically is a body snatcher, as we find out. And we also find out, hey, there might be more than one Dark Falls. Oops.
Yeah. The original Dark Falls split up into two entities. No 3, nor 4, nor 5, nor 6, nor 7, nor 8. And it continues on.
Yeah, as the story of the game and the show goes on, we start to see that there's more than one Dark Falls. They don't always see eye to eye to each other. Which
interesting. Okay.
Makes it interesting because there's some infighting between the Fallses.
That is not bad at all. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh no, here's a new version of Dark Falls. Here's a new version of Dark Falls. Once the other one is beaten, So always get a more big bad, but still it's like a splinter or remnant or a ghost of the original Darkfalls or something. But this sounds like, so maybe they're all different aspects of the original Darkfalls personality or something who don't really see eye to eye. Is it kind of like that, or?
A little bit. It also goes back to something called the Profound Darkness, which is beyond the scope of episode 1.
Welcome to my college life.
But yeah, the concept of the Profound Darkness and what that deals with is beyond the scope of episode 1, and we're not going to talk about that this time around.
Okay.
But yeah, so Gedemholt loses his mind. He becomes Darkfall's elder. He turns into a giant planet-eating monster called Elder the Gargantuan, and he sort of takes off and he does his thing. And now that the secret of Darkfalls is out, the Oracle fleet and Arcs are kind of like, oh, shit. I guess now we actually have to do something about this.
Which we could have done all the time, probably, and then...
Yeah. So when the Foulspawn outbreak starts to be more than can be reasonably handled, one of the leaders of the Council of Six, Regius, he is urged by this other character, Luther.
Aha! There we go.
He says, hey, buddy, you can end this by using the giant photon beam that's on the Ark's fleet main flagship. And Regius is like, I don't like the idea, but you're right. And
I mean, what else do we have? A giant laser for us,
So they power it up, and when they fire off this giant beam and defeat Elder the Gargantuan, it sort of takes a large chunk of the fleet with it.
Whoops! Well,
yeah, like 100
win some, you lose
ships.
some. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's not a small number. And
those were all populated, or?
Yes.
Wow, okay, that kind of sucks. I mean,
so
maybe...
Regius kind of like, he has to play it off like, yeah, he's like, yes, this was absolutely necessary. All of those Arcs, gave their lives and services. It's like, dude.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's really like, oof.
Maybe ask first. I mean, was it that urgent or, time sensitive, or was there time to maybe consider other options?
Nope.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, then sucks to be Regius, I guess.
But it's weird because that's not the end of episode 1.
Okay.
Throughout episode 1, you meet this character named Kuna, and she asks Ash and the others about rampaging dragons, like these dragons that are like just completely taken up by the Foulspawn, and they've lost their sense of self and their faculties, and they just go around, in particular, hunting down and killing Arcs. I forgot to mention earlier that the part of the photon thing deals with having to filter out like the spores, the cells that the Foulspawn give off. So we sort of see a couple times that some Arcs operatives, when they absorb too much of this F factor, that's what it's called, F factor, if they can't purify it well, sometimes some hunters got to be put down.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. But Kuna is going after this one dragon in particular called Hadred. And we find out that she and Hadred were part of this weird research facility where these people were experimenting with like dragon cells and whatnot on real actual people. And it turns out that Hadred was kind of a lab experiment gone wrong, and he just sort of starts to go nuts, and Kuna is out to stop him.
Okay.
When she and Ash are finally able to put down Hadred, there's this sort of bittersweet moment where Kuna's like, why couldn't you have ever just talked to me? What was the matter? After this happened, you stopped talking. And in his final moments, he's like, hey, you used to sing real nice. Can you sing for me one last time? It's like, oh. So with his dying breath, Hadred says that's Kuna. And Kuna, sings this one song for him. And after that, she decides, hey, I guess my mission's accomplished. So I'm going to go and, sing my songs for other people and make them happy. So, it's, your character became an idol, but had motivation to do it to, enrich other people's lives. Who would have thought? And that's pretty cool. And that almost closes the curtain on episode 1 because we find out that all throughout Ash has had communications with this woman named Shion, and she seems to know things, like a lot of things, like everything, really.
Is she the character who is the remnant from the original way the story in the game was structured with the different boards and everything, that always talks to you about different, I don't know, not algorithms, but,
Divergence matrix.
Divergence matrix, yes, that stuff.
Yes, that is her.
Okay.
And we find out at the tail end of episode 1 that Luther has a very strong, obsession with finding her and, learning what she knows and just, trying to come into contact with her. But we see that he can't, see her or interact with her in the form that she takes. So he goes on this the end of episode 1 is the beginning of seeing this obsession that drives the story of episode 2. So, and that's pretty much the first 10 episodes of PSO2 episode Oracle, and a large chunk of that story of the game. And shit gets weird and real, and it's pretty cool.
Sounds good. I'm sadly, due to time constraints, I wasn't able to get further into it than 1 or 2 episodes or 3. I'm not sure. But I didn't pick it up again. But yeah, this sounds actually like a really good and fun adaptation overall. Yeah,
it is. I feel like I should run down the changes now because, I made sure to play through all of episode 1 for this talk, and I wanted to get to episode 2, but I haven't had a chance because...
No spoilers, though. I might actually, either play the game version of this or, or actually watch the anime if there is going to be a second season of this.
So like I said, everything is just going to be episode 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So in episode 1, part of trying to hunt down the rampaging dragons deals with trying to interact with this race of draconians in these dragon ruins and in this floating continent on Navarius. And part of that story is driven by this researcher Aki and her assistant Wright. And you go from place to place with her, meeting with different draconians and trying to talk and parlay with them and, learn about what their existence is like. And it culminates in you and Aki becoming friends with this giant quartz dragon and most of their race, and be like, hey, we're cool now. We have a better understanding of each other. And there's some development there that's really interesting. That also plays into trying to clear the Foulspawn out of the dragon roost, where there is a fight where you're going around clearing out Foulspawn, and as you do, draconian warriors start spawning in to help you, and it feels like, yeah, the warriors are here to help, and it's great and it's cool, and that's not in the anime.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
I was about to say, hey, PSO2 Heavensward.
A little bit. There's this sub-story with this cast called Fourier, who's trying to learn about the natives of Lilliput, and she asks you to help, get to know them and ferret them out and speak. They're like these little 2-foot-tall, fuzzy, almost rabbit-looking things that you sort of get to know and interact with over the course of the game. Fourier is not in the show. When Cena and Gedemholt are releasing Elder, there's this interesting dialogue moment where you only hear half of the dialogue, where Gedemhul is like, "What do you mean I'm weak? Shut the fuck up. I'm not weak. You're the one who's weak. That's why I'm taking your strength." And that's not in the game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you see this sort of like dialogue where you don't see who he's yelling at, but you sort of get the idea that because, Dark Falls, he's coming out to play, that he's like, "No, I'm taking your power," and Elder's like, "Nah, bro, I'm taking yours."
Yeah. You are too weak-minded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that moment, when Elder comes out, he takes on a form called Fal's Hunal, which is like a big stone armor version of himself that you, the player, Xeno, Echo, and one of the member of the Council of Six, Kasra, all fight. And it's this knockdown, drag-out fight that's not in the show.
Oh, that sounds too cool. That sounds cool. I don't know why they didn't put it in. It's weird.
I don't know. So when Elder takes off and he becomes Elder the Gargantuan, in the game there are these two raids that you do. One is fighting his hands, which are giant, where his fingers turn into like giant Cerberus hands.
Okay.
Called the Raging Obsidian Arms. And then when you fight Elder itself, he's like this giant creature where his arms are like, he has 6 arms. They like come out of him like these long tentacle things, and they call him Elder of the Unfathomable Abyss, and it's this wild fight. There's that confrontation. Neither of those confrontations are in the anime because they get replaced with Regius and Luther using the Oracle Fleet Cannon to take him out. And I would argue that's kind of a change for the better because it gives Regius some character development. Because, he does this thing that you can tell he's not on board with doing, but he has to keep up the facade that I did this for the greater good.
Yeah. It gives the thing more gravitas, I guess, because if you go by the rules of the game, he should have been just able to send in some orcs to beat the shit out of that version of, Elder. And to make it more of a threat, we actually have to unleash this weapon of mass destruction that takes out like a whole lot of our fleet. So yeah, that gives
it makes more sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense and makes the situation more heavy, more grim, and more desperate and everything. So I guess it feels more dramatic.
Kuna's motivation is different in the show than it is in the game, because in the game we sort of get the impression that she is a gun that's hired by the Council of Six, and there's a little bit of that in the game, or in the show, but not to the same extent. They make her seem more autonomous and like she's, I'm hunting down Hadrid to get a conclusion to my own story. Also, you find out in the game that she is the idol Kuna before, she has that shift in character the show, which is kind of a weird narrative dissonance between the two. But the show does a better job of fleshing out the backstory between Kuna and Hadrid than the game does, which, I appreciate that. And probably the last big change, like I've kind of gone on and said, is Luther. Luther is a lot more present than he is in the game, and it works better because it makes him seem a lot more nefarious, because in the game he shows up in literally the last moment of the last chapter of episode 1, whereas in the show we see flashes of him throughout, and you sort of get that seed planted in your head that maybe he's not a good person. He's probably not. And probably the actual last change is Ash himself. He's a surrogate for the player character, but he feels like he has an impact on those around him and the conversations and the interactions he has, because the interactions you have with the characters in the game, they're there, but it's not excused in the game because it's a game from 2012, but it feels like it could be more substantial in game. Whereas Ash talks to the characters, he gets to know them. There's this one conversation with Malphon Cena later on, where Cena is pouring out his heart to him, and Ash is like, I don't know what to tell you. All I can do is empathize with you, and I can say, in the moment that things happened, you did what you thought was right. And if you need someone to listen to, if you need someone to listen to you, or you need someone to talk to, hey, I'll be there. You can talk to me. And it's like, you know what? I appreciate that more than just, oh, blah, 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 blue, sort of, here's your dialogue choice list of, here's the good answer, here's the evil answer. His was it felt like the real, like, hey, I wasn't in that situation, but I can tell you, probably would have done the same thing, sort of deal. So I like that.
Then he feels more like a character, and I always prefer that. That's the old conundrum about games where you create your own character, and that's kind of always the case in MMOs, and try to play that story as yourself, which I always like. I don't prefer this version of handling an RPG or an online game or anything, any game really. I always prefer a well-crafted individual character that I can empathize with and thus feel his the story through his or her eyes, right? That's more interesting to me than the game trying to make me the main character and me trying to imagine myself being in that situation without giving me any additional characteristics. Because it's like, no, you're the bland slate because you make the decisions. It's like, no, but I don't. I know myself. I can't learn anything new about myself really by doing this. Yeah, there are some very rare cases in games where that happens, and those are very good games. But most of the time it's like, okay, I do things, talk to these characters the way I would, but that's not necessarily interesting to me. I mean, that's different for each player and everything. Everyone plays differently. But for me, it's always like, no, I would rather have a character that is really, really well crafted and I can empathize with, and that really fits into the story that all these characters relate to, that, that he has a relationship with all these characters. And it always feels like especially in the older MMOs, like your character, they don't really do that with your character. You always almost this blank slate hero type who is kind of a savior in some way or another, or the rookie who has to learn everything about this world and gets basically filled into it by the other characters, and then exposition dump and that and shit. But there's no real character growth or character relation or anything. It's just like, characters just talking to you and you trying maybe to talk back at them if you're not a completely mute character. And that was always one of the shortcomings. A good comparison for that. Sorry, I keep droning on about that, but this is an interesting subject for me.
Not every character or not every game can have an in-depth morality system like, for instance, Mass Effect or that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Mass Effect also has its flaws in that regard, because I feel like the Renegade option in those games is fun, but that doesn't feel to me like that would be really the character Shepard in this, like in this universe. That a lot of those choices and how he reacts to it when you choose the Renegade side don't make a lick of sense. Like, are so overdrawn and so ludicrously cartoonishly evil that it makes no fucking sense that he would do that as someone who is part of the of this fleet of space fucking heroes or agents or soldiers.
You mean wouldn't punch a news reporter in the face?
Depends. She's from Fox News. But yeah, right. But still, you're right. There, at least in that sense, there is more of a. You feel like this is still a well-crafted character and a character and not you necessarily, right?
Yeah.
That exists in this universe. But, in other games you have like Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a fantastic game with fantastic characters, fantastic story. And then you switch over to that, which I did. The next game in the series was Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is more an MMO type game where you create your own character. And that character, again, is you, and the other characters talk to you. And you have some experiences with them, and in some ways it goes further than other games do in trying to explain why your character is the way it is, he is, or she is, and everything. But it's like, okay, there's not really that much meaningful interaction or development with these other characters. And it feels a bit unsatisfying when compared to the previous game, because you have like these really strong character bonds and really strong story and character developments in there. And I was worried again with this because, like I said, PSO2, the game is, you are that kind of character. You are a blank slate because they wanted you to create your own character, and that's nice and all, and it's nice that the game has so many different races and classes to choose from and make your... I'm very happy with my fucking Star Sheriff robot cowboy. I love to play that character, but I would like to have that character an actual part and, interesting motivation and part in the story. I don't want to make that the backstory of my character up. I want the game provide that to me. I want the writers to write an interesting story for that character. And then let me maybe decide how that character looks. A bit like in Mass Effect games, like you said. So, I'm happy to hear that they actually, took the time and made the extra effort to turn that kind of blank slate, shooting character from the game into an actual character for the anime. I feel like that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, because, there's even some scenes where... Ash wants to do his own thing, and he does it, and then he has to answer for it. Mm. So, you see him...
Consequences.
You see him being like, I did what I thought was right, and other characters being like, dude, what the hell? And he's like, but no. So, even though it's in service of, furthering the plot, it still feels like, some of his... questionable choices, I wouldn't call them evil or bad, but questionable choices, that he feels like are the right thing to do, definitely play into the development of his character and the interactions with those around him. Man,
rookie mistakes.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought going into this that Ash would have felt like, a decent character. I was like, oh, well, he's going to be, whatever. Not everyone else is going to do all the things around him. No, it doesn't feel that way at all. It feels, really good to see things play out and to, watch his character develop and, how his relationships with the other characters, play out. This show was a surprise. Like, I was hoping to be this was what I wanted PSO2 the animation to be, and I got it. I got it with episode Oracle, and I was happy.
Finally.
With it. And I was super glad. And it turns out that PSO2, the animation, might be partial canon. Fuck.
You will never get rid of the curse, John. You have to watch all of it again to make sense of the lore.
I want to touch on that real quick before we close that out. Because when PSO2, the animation, aired, that was around the time episode 4 of the game launched, which I didn't honestly realize at that time. So, episode 4 of the game involves Arcs and the Oracle fleet traveling to Earth. It turns out that Earth is not part of the dimension that Oracle is in. So they travel to, this other dimension planet, and it turns out that this Earth is a portal to the universe that Oracle and the Arcs fleet inhabit through an online game called Phantasy Star Online 2, headed up by the Eska Corporation. God fucking damn it!
I told you! I said, John, I think I read something about this fucking PSO2 thing, the animation thing being canon. I know it doesn't make sense because it's only characters playing the game in high school or something, but I think I read somewhere it was part of the game in some way. It was part of the plot. And you were like, nah, that can't be. That's bullshit.
I should have listened. Why didn't I listen?
I'm sorry that I'm right.
No, you're not.
I kind of not. I'm enjoying this too much. But still, I mean, I wonder. So once we get to episode 4 in this adaptation, will it then be a recreation of PSO2 the animation? Or is it just a side story that happens in that universe that doesn't really...
Here's what I read. PSO2 the animation takes place apparently a year before episode 4. Because the animation does not touch on the big bad of episode 4, this force called the Mother Cluster. So, yeah, what a name. So, yeah, it's not... PSO2 the animation is not episode 4. It's not canon to the game, but it takes place before the game, so it might be canon. Ugh!
So it might just be a bridge between episode 3 and 4, or like a side story that you don't necessarily need to watch to understand what's going to happen in episode 4, but that works as a companion piece, maybe?
Yes.
Sounds like it would be something like that.
I guess so. I mean, PSO2 the animation is still a rancid trash fire, if you ask me. It didn't get...
Hey, I never watched past episode 1, so...
You know what? It had a really dope opening theme performed by Aoi Shota. And then, when we got to the actual Arcs Fleet shit in, like, the last 3 episodes, where we got to see Zeno and Kasra and Matoi, and, that was like, yes, these are the things that I clapped because I know that. But, I feel like... I guess if you want plot setup for what episode 4 is supposed to be, you can watch it, but it is in large part like, who fucking cares? These characters, Itsuki and whatever his fucking friends are, I guess they exist. I guess, one of their friends being nicknamed I. Hey, did you know Sega games? I know Sega games.
Yeah.
That's
I wonder if they, for some reason, become relevant to the plot in some part, maybe in episode 5 or something. Or,
I hope not.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, we didn't... I mean, the anime, like this new anime adaptation of the actual plot of the game, hasn't gotten to episode 3 yet, so that needs to come first anyway. Well, is it coming? Like, did they announce that a new season is coming?
There's been no announcement of like an episode Oracle Part 2, I guess you could call it. But yeah, I mean, if they make it, they have the same crew working on it, and they take the same care to make the story more interesting. Yeah, I'll watch it, but before then, I got to play through episodes 2 and 3 because episode 4 is coming out in August. But I kind of put that on the back burner because I want to get through Destiny 2 before literally 85% of the game is vaulted in September. Oops.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good time.
But yeah, if you're looking for a primer on the story of Phantasy Star Online 2, Episode Oracle isn't a bad place to start. And then if you want to play the game and then watch the show, or watch the show and then play the game, it's neat to, compare and contrast the differences between the two. So you can be like, oh, I can understand why they made this change, or I'm not sure why they made that change, that sort of thing. It's still really neat. So yeah, I feel like this show is, worth watching. It's definitely enjoyable. It's got, all of the characters that are pertinent, that are, key and pertinent to the story for the most part. The animation is pretty solid. I will say it was kind of a little weird because the scene where Get 'em Holt becomes Elder and then turns into Elder the Gargantuan, they just lifted that FMV from the game wholesale and put it into the show.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it doesn't look out of place and it doesn't look bad, but I was watching it, I was like, not having seen the cut scene for myself in the game before that point, I was like, is this just an asset from the game? And I went and looked up, I was like, oh, yep.
It sounds like the reverse thing they did for Final Fantasy 15, where they put stuff from Kingslave just in the fucking game.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't make a lick of sense because you don't have the context. They just show this giant battle, I think, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. At least in this in PSO2, it makes a bit more sense.
Yeah. There is at least some level of consistency on that front. But yeah, PSO2 episode Oracle it's definitely enjoyable to watch. If you're interested in the story of the game, and you don't have time to play the game because, you know, it's an MMO. It's a time sink. But there's in the story quests, you can actually play stuff at a lower difficulty, so you don't have to like grind up to max level or get like top tier gear. You just sort of play the game at a lower difficulty and enjoy it and still get the same experience of the story. So I think that's cool that is an option in there. And believe you me, sometimes playing on hard mode when the enemies are at your level is not the best choice to make. That fight with Fal's Huno, when you're at level, holy shit.
Okay, I'll see if I'll ever get there.
But yeah, PSO2 episode Oracle, really good. Thumbs up from me. If you want to check it out, it's on Funimation now and Hulu, and streaming internationally. It looks like it's on Wakanim, Usasia, and Anime Lab. So, you know, if you have a cursory interest, you can check it out. You can see the characters. You can hear snippets of the music from the game, because it's one thing I didn't touch on. The show and the game has real good music. Sega always knows what they're doing with their music. You can say what you will about some of their games, but the music is really good. So yeah, I would say, you know, if you have an interest, check it out.
And that is a wrap on the 95th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrit.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
So long, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Throw open the gates of Babylon.
And kneel before your king, mongrels.